Thank you very much. I want to compliment everyone, and it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to Attila and to all the organizers. And a special hello to my friend Matza Savas, which I don't see for many years, but I see it looks very well. It's good to see you very well. And all of you. Well, I have been doing this question to myself, as all of us during these years, and I will try to speak about a little bit how I imagine will be labor. Why this question is important for me, because I think that in the struggle for socialism and our debate for socialism is always about criticizing capitalism, and it's never about how we foresee other types of society, how we foresee a socialist society. I will share my thoughts with you using, of course, lots of literature that was done before about this, but also using my two fields of research, which is the Portuguese Revolution, where a huge part of the production was put for 2 years under workers' control. What did I realize during this time, studying this period, that has changed in labor practice, in labor production, and also comparing to nowadays in a peripheral country like Portugal, but also in my studies in European history, where just-in-time model is spread, as was said before, everywhere. And we have been in Portugal. I coordinate a team of 20 researchers, including medical expertise, psychiatrists. We are doing workers' inquiry in major sectors nowadays. We have, just in teachers, we have 19,000 answers. We have automobile industry, we have dock workers, we have aircraft sector, we have nurses. We start studying the burnout, but this spread to labor and living conditions. So there is a huge contrast between how these people worked in 74, 75 and how do they work nowadays, and how we can deal with theory on this. So I have very short time, so I will share with you my main thoughts on this. First of all, labor, I think we have been too much pressured by the idea of social assistance, labor as a necessity, labor as, of course, a way of living condition in capitalism, since you cannot live without a labor or without family or social assistance. The major critics in the last years, which were very strong at the university field, in the academy, were this idea of anti-labor movements. The crisis group and other groups that looks, they are kind of anarchists. This is a very reductionist approach to this, but I don't have time to develop this. So these groups are not anarchists, but they put the main line on labor as a process of torture, as a process of suffering. Well, if we go back to some of the most dynamic Marxist approach, and especially, of course, Lukács is founder of this idea, and very strong also the psychology developed in Soviet Union with the Leontiev, Vygotsky, Luria, etc. Labor is part of humanization of the people. So you cannot really be human without labor, because labor historically and historically, it's the way you become individual. It's the universal achievements of labor allowed you to have more freedom. Of course, I'm speaking in labor as a process of developing brain, language. It is related with this necessity, of course, but is much more than necessity. Is about creativity and about humanization process. And nowadays, as in the last 30 years, the discourse, the political discourse, has been between neoliberal flexible approach, which is the insecurity of labor and the securityness of the profit. To make a joke with Alan Freeman, I would say that it's about unorganizing labor and planning profit. So profit has been extremely planned with the insecurity of labor. And this has led to the other side. It's dominant, the social democratic approach, which is the social assistance approach. If you realize, not even the full employment policy is defended anymore. What is defended now by the majority of the left, including in the academy, of course, is the social assistance. So workers should have unemployment subsidized, workers should have food, workers should have healthcare, but nobody really speaks about workers should have employment. In my opinion, this has had also impact on the strength of the extreme right, but we could develop this afterwards. So I think the idea of defending social assistance instead of defending the dignity of labor gives space to the extreme right to condemn non-labor practice. But if you see this from a left point of view, in a socialist society, what we defend is that everybody has access to labor, to creative labor, except those that cannot work, like old people, children, disability, that should be extremely funding, of course, by solidarity systems. So I think this is a theoretical question, which for me is very obvious because it has been very obvious in the last 200 years, but nowadays is not obvious anymore. So it's very difficult to defend a full employment and labor policy, since we are always debating with postmodern approach that says that labor is just about torture. The second thing is that when we make the contrast between revolutionary process and nowadays, we see that burnout or presenteeism or absenteeism or all process of alienation, it's new names and metrification of alienation. In fact, all this process didn't exist in 74, 75, 76, although people worked more. So what has happened in Portugal is that people went to work 24 hours a day to build the socialism. What I want to point is that the mental health problems and today in labor in factories and in not just in factories, because Fordism system, it's everywhere now. It's in hospitals, it's in schools. We are not in a post-Fordist society. We are spreading Fordism everywhere, and the management techniques of the 30s in the automobile industry are now used in hospitals, are now used in schools, are now used in public services, for example, that have been industrialized. So these sectors that were out of capitalist society in Western countries for some years, in fact, are now totally under a management process as well. Although they are state services, they are not public anymore. And we should make the differences between public and state, because it's not the same. And this is, of course, connected to what was said before about management and democratic management. What I think it happened in 74, which that's why people went to work so hard every day, in more than 600 companies that were under workers' occupation, or in the big companies that were under workers' control, including bank sector, because this happened in 74, 75 in Portugal, was that people could work hard because they were working for themselves. So the alienation process disappeared, the division between production and consumption disappeared, the sense of labor, in the sense of ontological sense, came back to these workers. They believed they were building their schools, the best schools for their children. They believed they were building the best hospitals for that. And this includes nurses, doctors, professors, not just workers, industrial workers. Everybody was involved in this process. So I think the process of alienation was broken. And nowadays what we see is that under just-in-time production, the process of alienation is so strong that you see mental health problems everywhere. Of course, I'm saying mental health, but these are social problems. These are capitalist problems. People do not have a mental health problem. They are depressed, they are stressed, they are tired, they say about themselves they are in burnout, they say they are not sufficiently resilient, etc. But this is all about labor organization. There is, fortunately for humankind, very few people who have really mental problems. Most of these problems are social problems. But the impact of these problems in a society is huge, because what we have is low quality of labor. The capitalists measure this in low productivity. Productivity is, of course, a huge problem for capitalism to keep the surplus. And they realize that even with automation, the productivity is not raising as it was expected. And I think one of the main problems is that people are not working well. They are not working with quality because they are working for profit. And we shall think that in a non-capitalist society, labor would be for richness, not for profit. I don't know if richness is a very good translation. What I'm saying is producing for quality, producing for uses of necessity. And this, for example, would change completely two main subjects of low productivity nowadays and ecological distress, which is, I don't know the word in English, this one, obsolescência programada, means when you produce a product to be destroyed in few moments. So you don't produce it for long use, you produce it foreseeing that it will just, like today, you have a fridge for 10 years. You don't have a fridge for 60 years.
It's planned obsolescence.
Planned obsolescence. Thank you so much, Radhika. So I believe that nowadays we have planned obsolescence related with products, but also with labor. I believe the companies are managing labor with planned obsolescence. The working time hours, the wages, and the management system of full quality and individual evaluation of workers leads the workers to physical and mental diseases around 45, 50, 55 years. Workers are collapsing and they are sent to social security. And I believe this is the planned obsolescence of workforce. In a highly rotated process of capital, workers are used, the maximum strength of the worker, mental and physically, is used in a maximum way. But this leads to the worker to don't be fit until he's 60, 70 or 80. Why I'm saying this? Because all the laws of European Union have been towards increasing retirement age, but at the same time allowed pre-retirement due to disabilities. all the laws are done making possible that the social security pays as soon as possible when you are disabled. And for example, many companies have such notion of this that they just hire workers between 20 to 35 years old. For example, the automobile industry, because they know that no one with 45 can handle with these labor conditions. That's why I'm saying it's planned obsolescence. I suppose I don't have any time.
I apologize to intervene. You have 2 more minutes.
Oh, so sorry. Well, I cannot say much more about this. Well, maybe 2 things I shall focus is the costs, the huge costs of labor in a free market society are very high if we look to education and health sector. All the health sector is in capitalism managing the return of the workers to labor or to pre-retirement, to social security, but not to prevent health problems. We would have huge gains concerning labor process if health was in direction of prevent health problems and not of not after the problems are raised. Sorry, my English becomes worse when I'm online in this. I would love to be with you in presence. And the second one is education system. All the education is directly to the market. This means that we are not using the capacities of labor, which I believe we could use in socialism in a very different way. And I shall quote Alexandra Kollontai on this. She wrote that we are so backward as humanity that even our words for our feelings are limited. For example, we call love and friendship to many different feelings. Not all of them are love, not all of them are friendship, but we don't have more words. Why we don't have more words? Because we don't have more feelings. We cannot live with them. So my point is, if we have labor and a non-capitalist society, the development of the society is so much bigger that even in words of feelings, we can move forward. Thank you so much.